Okay, it is Tuesday, October the 2nd, 7 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time straight up, and I am Richard Wright. I am your instructor for Introduction to Criminal Justice, and I'll be your instructor for the next 5 weeks, 5.5 weeks, 6 weeks, and making sure that you get all your assignments in on time. But today we're going to go a little longer than normally an hour because I wanted to share something with you at the end. So I'm going to get started, and I'm going to share my screen so we can cover the expectations for this course. Okay, so one of the things that you should all become familiar with is the course homepage. The course homepage in this class is one that will provide you with a lot of information, a lot of details concerning my expectations that will help you, if you follow them or use them, to be very successful in this first course that you take. Many of you are new, and that as a result, you will learn very quickly that my policies are laid out pretty clearly on the course homepage, and you want to be able to get that. Now, let me go back to stop sharing, go back to the classroom for a minute. You have to activate audio to hear the lecture. Okay, so I'm going to go back to sharing. You got to make sure that you activate audio, otherwise you will not hear. Okay, and then turn off your camera. Turn off your camera. There's a little thing you can hover over it for camera and click on it and turn it off. Okay, there we go. You got it. All right, so now let me go back to what I was talking about. So anyway, these are some important details on this homepage. Almost every question that you could even ask me, I lay it out for you. And the course homepage is the first page you open up even before you get to the modules for the week. And so I want to familiarize you with this course homepage. The very first thing that you should be able to see is my name and my phone number, 630-660-8480. Under that is a very important statement, which means what it says. Students can feel free to call me, text me, or email me any hour of the day except the 25th hour of the day. Now, you figure that one out, and it means what it says. I've been doing this for, actually today is my 7th year anniversary of being at Rasmussen College, and I've been using this probably for the last 5 years, and been very, 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 very successful with helping students to understand that I'm here to help. And then I'm going to be talking about APA. That's the method for citations and references. And we're going to discuss critical thinking, are important to the grading of all assignments. So these are things that this will be right here in front of you. Again, I remind you under additional course material information that you're required to conduct research for all papers. And we provide resources for you that are available to help you with your written assignments. I will share those with you in a few minutes. And that means that the sole source of your papers should not be the textbook, which is one that's an e-book. You will lose 2 points if you don't conduct research. Now, that's not in the rubric, but that's a note for you. All written assignments all should be in APA format. That means citations in the body of the paper and references at the end. You should also provide a cover sheet for all written assignments. So these are very important things that you should be aware of right from the beginning. And then there's some helpful resources that I include here, which you can take time to deal with peer mentor versus tutoring. Now there's a guide here for student success. This guide is primarily for students who have been in the college a while. But many of you, and most of you, will utilize this new student success guide. If you will click on this, and I'm going to click on it just to show you, it will lead you to what it is. And it explains to you the things that you need to know and to understand. There is all of these tabs. You click on them, and then they help you, okay? And you can utilize this. Tells you about your textbooks and everything else that you need to know. So that's one source. There is also a video that is included as well that you'll be able to find. And then there's a guide to this particular course, Introduction to Criminal Justice Studies, that you can utilize. These two things are very valuable, and you have them on your course homepage. Again, you click on it, and then there's a video that if you go on and you look at it, I'm not going to click on it, it's about 320, and it gives you some tips for new students as well. The guy on the left, that's our criminal justice librarian. He also deals with paralegals, but those of you in this course here. And then, so you take time to click on this video and look at it. And it gives you some guidance and help in all areas. And it talks about resources for this particular course. Now, that's Introduction to Criminal Law, so you don't want to use that one, because that's another class that you would take with me. I also teach drugs and crime as well. But anyway, this one right here will help you to understand the assignments and all the things that you need. So you want to make sure you use that as well. And you could click on these. Justice Studies Homes for research, writing help, APA toolkit. It tells you also about help with assignments, which also I have included a link in there as well that you'll see when you look at it. So these are some tools that will be very, very, very helpful to you if you take the time to use them. And then I encourage students to recognize that we run all your papers, your written papers, through Grammarly, not your discussion posts, but your written assignments. You have written assignments, not this week you don't have. You have a quiz, which is also a written assignment. But weeks 2, 3, 4, and 5, you will have written assignments. And it tells you the parameters in the rubric, which we will go into next week as we cover starting with week 2. Grammarly is free to you, but you need to use the account system that we have laid out for you. You need to use that one. And when you go to it, you click on it, and it tells you where to find it. And actually, it's under the Resources tab as well. But if you go to Grammarly in the course and use this code, you will get a free course. Now, we use this for grammar, mechanics, spelling, and plagiarism. Now, even if you put citations and references in the body of a paper, you can still get a plagiarism hit from Grammarly, because it's going to base it on how much of the content that you discovered from research that you're going to include in your papers. So we're going to be looking primarily for a lot of critical thinking. You guys may or may not have been introduced to it yet, but you're going to help yourself by not just copying and pasting material. We don't want you to do that. We want you to provide your spin, your details, your analysis of the issues that you present. So Grammarly is very important. People will say, well, why did I lose 25 points? Why did I lose 26 points? If you go beyond a certain percentage, I will give you a Grammarly hit, and you will lose those points. So let's say if you had 100 and you lose 25 points, you're going to get a 75. So you don't want to. If it's under 25, then you're not going to get it hit with it. But I will warn you that you're getting close to the level. The average is 10 to 15%, and you can determine that yourself by running your papers through Grammarly. Do not submit your papers, though, with your checking Grammarly on it. You need to clean your papers up and then submit them very clean. Discussion posts, which are due every Tuesday and every Saturday. Your initial posts are due tonight by 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. Your reply posts are due Saturday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time, with the exception of week 6, which I won't talk about till we get to that point. But needless to say, for the next 5 weeks, your initial posts are due Tuesday. Your reply posts are due on Saturday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. And this gives you some guides to discussion posts as well. There is a rubric. Then there is some help for APA to help you, a video that helps you understand it, a paper template, and then if you need tutoring support with APA as well, that's included there. So it's very, very, very important. So again, I'm repeating that my course homepage gives you stuff that you could click on, but I have it already in front of you. I've installed it to help you. Here, if you have your weekly writing assignments and you need some help, click on this link and it will get you to the guides for weekly written assignments. How to find a statute or a state criminal law, which you may have to do in this course. How to find a state constitution, you click on that. How a U.S. Supreme Court case is to be cited. So, how to find Supreme Court cases. How to cite cases and the U.S. Constitution. There's a link there that helps you to be able to do that as well. So you can do that properly in your written assignments. And then there's some library answers, and then there's some more information about the writing guide itself. But you have it down here. But this one here gives you your weekly assignments broken down. Now, if you are a person who wants someone to look at your paper, to view your paper, then we have a writing lab, and here's the link to that. However, be aware that the turnaround time, I believe, is 48 hours, and I don't extend time for people who submit papers to the writing lab and they get submitted late. So it behooves you that since your papers are going to be due on Sundays, starting with this week, which again, there is no written assignment, but there is a quiz that you will do, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But each week you will have a written assignment, and 2, 3, 4, and week 5. So for additional writing resources, you can click on this link. So I give you a whole lot of links to find things. And then there's a guide to library and learning center resources, which helps you with your research. Then should you need tutoring, this explains how tutoring works. Now be aware that, and I'm not going to go over this in specifics, but be aware of the fact that tutoring is not just for a person who is struggling. It is also for students who want to enhance their papers, who want to get A's as opposed to B's, who want to, do well. And so these are ways that you can do it. If I see you consistently struggling with some of this stuff that I've talked about earlier, I will make a referral that you will get an email for tutoring. Then you'll need to follow up on that. Then I've provided some interesting articles, how going beyond the textbook works, analytical tips. This helps you with your critical thinking. Importance of information literacy, which means to be able to research and find material. One student asked me one time, why do we have to do so much research? It's because of the fact that you are learning as a student. You are learning an area that you're not familiar with. And I can tell you about, when I talk about my background, you will discover that information literacy is so important because law changes, procedures change regularly, all the time. And that because the era that we're in now, that we still need to know how to be literate with information and provide up-to-date details for ourselves as well as for our future employers. Referencing criminal justice, I provided you with some of that earlier, but these are all articles. You don't have to worry about this one because you don't have to do that one. Then there's an article, if you heard me talk about critical thinking. If you want to just take some time, just copy and paste this link and then put it in your browser and then take a look at that on your time. You see, students, it is so important that when you start off by getting information, don't just dive into the assignment. That's a mistake that a lot of students make. They just dive right in and get it done and then lose key points. Start off, take the time to get all the information that you need. I was a pretty good student because I was always one who wanted to understand beyond what the assignment called for, so that when I did prepare my assignment, I went above and beyond the requirements. I provided to you an email with the United States Constitution Bill of Rights. I sent you the PDF in the email, but it's also included on here. And then under here, these bullet points actually elaborate on them, some of them, from the 4th, 5th, 6th Amendment, and then the 8th Amendment. These are the ones that primarily affect criminal justice, particularly the 4th Amendment, search and seizure issue, the 5th Amendment, self-incrimination issue. You've heard of Miranda, the right to remain silent. That includes the 5th Amendment. And then the presumption of innocence until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. That's the standard that we have. And so you have due process, including the 5th and the 14th Amendment applying it to the states. 6th Amendment, right to cross-examine witnesses, and also the right to an attorney and a speedy trial. Those are some of the 6th Amendments. So these are incorporated, so these are for you as well. Again, there's other places in the course, but I said I would put it in one comprehensive place. And then your rubrics are located in each written assignment. You'll see them, and then your discussion rubric. Now, this is a reminder about lectures. The first lecture is taking place right now, and it will probably go until 8:30. The reason I'm saying that is because I'm going to share something with you. I'm going to spend as much time. This is not going to be the normal lecture. This is going to be more of an open house, going through all the requirements and expectations. And that this recording today will be one that you might want to refer back to and keep it handy. If not, it'll be actually archived or recorded, and it will be at the bottom here under recordings, as well as I will email them to you as well. I usually do my recordings by converting them to MP4s and not just using WebEx. And the reason why I do that is because some students have trouble with WebEx, and then sometimes WebEx systems have problems. It takes me a little longer to convert and upload them, but they're easily accessible to you on YouTube. It does not change the lecture. It doesn't change how it sounds or even how it looks. It just makes it more convenient for the student. We have had several times during the quarter where there's been times when they had to do some updating of WebEx, and lectures were not available for students for a few days, and they had delays. There are no delays in mine. The recording, though, is not automatically right after this. It takes me an hour or two, and I have basically 24 hours before I need to make it available, and I try to make it available pretty fast to students. So anyway, weeks. Now pay attention to this very carefully. Okay, so weeks 2, 3, 4, and 5 lectures will take place beginning next week. So a week from today, and will run about an hour, pretty much. And that's Central Standard Time if you're in different time zones, as I have students who are in Eastern Time Zone, some in Western. Now, week 6, you don't have to worry about it now, but during week 5, I'll be doing 2 lectures. So the last lecture will take place the last Tuesday in October, but then the last lecture, or rather the last Tuesday lecture, and then I'll be doing a Friday lecture at 7:30, not 7 to 8:30 p.m., and I'll be talking about the sum total of the course. We have a little while before we get there. Okay, that's going to be actually it's in November, to be honest with you. You must attend the live lecture or listen to the archive. There'll be a keyword given during each lecture. Sometimes it's at the end, sometimes in the middle, sometimes it's at the middle, sometimes it's at the end. The key is I don't want you just to look at the lecture or listen to the lecture for the archive or for the keyword to get your points. You should take the time and listen to the things that I say. I can tell you I've had many students to come back to me and ask me questions that I've covered in the live lecture, and I usually will tell them. I'm not trying to be rude, but I take the time to be very detailed, as specific as I can, taking my time to lay out everything from A to Z. If you want to get an A, I guarantee you, if you will follow the steps that I lay out in the lectures, that are in the rubric, in the modules, you will get an A. I can guarantee you that. I have students time and time again. You'll be required to provide me the keyword if you don't attend a live lecture, or if you do. I will keep a record of who's attending, so I know who attends and who is not attending. I will say this to you guys up front, starting with this first week. Those students who generally take the time to attend the lectures, particularly the live lectures, are the ones who come out on the top. Because number one, they have an opportunity to ask me questions contemporaneously with the material later on in students. Now, let me digress and back up a minute here. At the top where I said you could text me, make sure that if you text me, that you include your name in the text and include the course that you're in, because I teach 5 classes. So it's very important that I know your name, because I'll see a phone number, but I won't know who it is. Okay. So now let me share a few things. Don't worry about this announcement. The writing process, I'm not going to spend a lot of time because I've already pretty much covered that on the other side, but it kind of helps you, and it tells you where you can find some information, but I've already given you that information over here. APA assistance, same thing. Make that less. Same thing here with APA. So now let's go to the welcome announcement. Go back up here. Here we go. Now, this welcome announcement, you'll be able to see this most of the quarter, if not all. It lets you know that some expectations I have for you. It tells you a little bit about my background and a little bit about my education. And I provide expectations. Those things that you see that are in bold print, make sure that you follow them. I have posted in the student lounge something about me. You can read that. And then some of you have provided information. Student lounge is information you want to get out this week. After this week, I don't go back to the student lounge. I've sent you a welcome message in your course mail. Make sure you check your course mail. Your course mail is under the tab in this course that says course messages on the left-hand side. So you want to check your course mail. Remember, you have what we call SMAIL or student mail, which it usually use your name, dot, your first name, your dot, and the last name, and then it'll say @ and then it'll say something like smail, rasmussen.edu or something close to that. That's your outside mail, and sometimes people use that. But most of your communication will take place with the course mail. The syllabus, I'm going to go over that in just a few minutes. So it's a very important piece of paper. It's not just something that people skirt over. I'm going to break it down to you, some important features in the syllabus for this open house. Your course calendar, which I populated, including every assignment, every due date, every time for the whole quarter. And you can see the whole month at a glance, and same with November, because this course finishes in November. And then if you have some general course questions, anybody can answer them, including you guys and me. You can post that. For example, I had one student one time to post in general course questions, when are the lectures? And I said, refer to the announcements. I said, refer to the course calendar and refer to your course homepage down at the bottom where it tells lectures in the schedule. So any questions. Now, don't put your own personal stuff out, like something you're struggling with. Don't put that out there. You can send that directly to me. The resources tab, where you can find valuable resources. Again, in this class, you don't have to rely too much on it because I've broken down a lot of these things on the course homepage. Your report tab is how you'll see your grade book. Now, be aware that when you see your grade book, I have had students that say to me, I didn't see any comments from you as to why I got a lower grade. The comments are after you look at the section for what the requirements are. Then there's a section for my comments, and I will tell you what you did wrong. and tell you why you lost points. I'm very, very, very descriptive about those things. Very important. Lastly, then I've already given you this information, so I'm not going to spend time here. And then reminding you again about our lecture schedule. And it tells you what I told you earlier about week 6, which I'm not going to go over again. And then each week we'll discuss videos, PowerPoints. I'm in the process. They just registered me for this course on Friday. So I'm in the process of getting the PowerPoints, if there are any available, that I will be sending to you that coincide with the reading. I won't use those so much in lecture, but they're good materials to help you study for the week. Again, so you're new at this, the link for the lecture, many of you already know that because you can't be here unless you didn't know this. Now, be aware that when you look at the recording is not where you're going to find this. The recording is different for each week because it is a recorded version of what you would hear right now. So those of you who attend the live lecture, if you want to go back and listen to it again, you'll listen to it not using this link, but using the link that is particularly related to that week's lecture. Okay, and then there's some other details about this as well. And so that's the announcement. Now, I'm going to now go take a look at this. Each week, you'll see at least one announcement. A lot of my information is repeated over and over and over in more than one place. But the announcements are so important because it tells you first what the topic of the week will be, such as overview of the criminal justice system and concepts of justice for this week. Next week, it'll be a different one. Tells you what you need to do in terms of reading. It also provides you with some information called lecture notes. Now, these are notes that I will be talking about in lectures. However, these are notes that you can study on your own after that will help you to connect more with the information and materials that are contained in each week's module. So you have lecture notes, and then there's a little thing called Understanding the Criminal Justice System, and then there's a practice activity, which I did myself earlier, and I'm going to refer it to you every week, that it will help you. It's not a graded assignment. It will help you. And so again, see, this tells you the schedule of the lectures, starting with tonight. Okay. Then it gives your discussion assignment, balancing individual rights and public order. And I already told you about the requirements for that. Same every week until you get to week 6. Finally, you have a written assignment, which you notice this week is a quiz. It is a timed quiz. I do recommend, and I say this over and over and over to students, that you want to take the time to go through the materials, look at the lecture, listen to it, and then do the quiz. You'll utilize the materials, and like I said again, I'm going to see what materials that are coming with the textbook that I can share with you, and if there's some that help you, I will be sending them every week to you. But the quiz is timed, so it behooves you to try to take that quiz no later than Sunday. You can take it before Sunday, but you don't want to find yourself in a situation where you cannot do well on the quiz, because you're going to have one of those every week until you have your final exam, which is in week 6. And then this reminds you about the open house that we're in right now. Okay. Now, at the bottom of each announcement, you will see the start strong and finish strong. And then my motto, adversity is the springboard to success. When I finish at the end, I will explain that to you, giving you my experience and letting you know that I'm a very empathetic professor when it comes to my students, that I believe in helping my students to make sure that they find themselves being successful. My goal is to establish student success. Okay, so now let me go to, first let's take a look at the syllabus. Let's take a look at the syllabus, okay? And so when you look at the syllabus, which that's pulling up right now, you will discover, move this up a little bit. Here we go. You'll see my name. First, you'll see the course name. You'll see my name, my email address for student mail. You could send it to me in richard.wright without a 2 at rasmussen.edu outside the course, and I'll get it as well. But then my instructor notes remind you the same thing that is on your course homepage about research and about APA, and letting you know about cover sheets and things like that. So that's another place you'll see that. And then skipping down to the course description, and you can read that stuff on your own. Your textbook is Criminal Justice, A Brief Introduction, 12th edition, which you have in the course that you have access to. So now, the course will be 5.5 weeks, and I won't look at this except to say to you, because we're in term 1, it says that written assignments are due on Sunday at midnight, and then for week 6, the last day of class, okay? Your discussion posts are due Tuesday at midnight, and again, Saturday at midnight for reply posts, and that applies the same way for weeks 2 through 5 till you get to the final week, which is the Tuesday after that. In week 6, you'll see it on the calendar in a few minutes, that your initial post and reply posts are due for week 6. Once again, the course will actually end at that time. So now the course will consist of readings, written assignments, discussion posts, quizzes. As I said, there are 5 quizzes every week, and then last week there is a comprehensive final exam. Now, listen to me good. The word comprehensive final exam means what it says. You have to take the materials that you, every week, you're not starting new, you're building. It's like building a house here, guys. Week 1, we're starting with the foundation. Week 2, we're building up to the first floor. Week 2, the second, third, fourth, fifth. Then in week 6, we put the roof over the house by covering all the information that are in weeks 1 through 5. That's how it's going to happen, and we're going to discuss that when we come to it. By the way, they are all timed. All of these tests are timed, and it is so important, the quizzes and the final exams. All right. I told you there are 4 written assignments that will help you apply the knowledge that you obtain through my lectures and the materials and the reading and the module. To be honest with you, this is not a lot of material. It's not a lot of information, and it's very, 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 very focused. And I encourage each and every one of you guys to take advantage and take your time. I know you have more than one course. I totally understand that because I have more than one course myself. I teach 5. As the first 5 weeks, I'll have 75 students. Then they'll add about another 60 students for the next, well, not really 60, more like 30 more students for weeks 5, 6 through 11, which doesn't apply to you guys, okay? Unless I see you in the next course, but I don't think so, because many of you, this course is the very first course. Some of you might be in J100, Introduction to Criminal Law, next quarter. Anyway, that's what you got to do for this course. Live lectures, I've already talked about the importance of the live lectures. Now, let's look at it from the breakdown. Your written assignments, of which I told you that there are 4. There's 100 points. So what does that mean? You get 25 points as a perfect score for each written assignment. You want to maximize those points. Discussions, you get 60 points because there are discussions in every week. So what does that mean? 10 points each week for 6 weeks. Your final exam, 150 points. And look at the percentage of your grade. Over 1/3 of your grade, okay? Your quizzes, you got 105 points. And so 24% of your grade. And then your lectures, you get 5 points for each lecture that you put the keyword in, or a total of 30 points. 445, your percentage is 100%. That's what you want to do. That's what you want to do. Now, I want to make an announcement right now up front, and I will not make it again. Do not call me, text me, email me, or any mode of communication to ask me the following question. What does it take to get a C in this course? I will not answer you because I've gone on record, I've told advisors, I've told academic deans that my job is not to produce C students. My job is to produce A and B students. And I pride myself on, as some students have said, you're pretty tough. No, I'm not. I'm very focused. And I believe that I want the best in professionals coming out of my classes. I can't speak for other professors. I can't speak for what other professors do or don't do. But I will tell you this, is that I don't give away A's and B's. I don't give C's. I don't give D's. I don't give F's. You earn everything that you put in to it. If you run into a problem during the course of this quarter, don't wait till week 3 or week 4 to let me know you had a problem. I had a student already that told me something about weeks 1 and weeks 2, not in this course, but in another course that I teach. And I sent the message telling the student who had me in other courses, they know how I operate. I need to know what's going on with you to help you, not to be nosy, not to get into your business, but to be able to understand what you're dealing with. I know that life happens. Like I said again, you're going to hear me in the last half an hour of this session today talk about that exact thing, and you'll understand why I say that. So these are the things that I will be doing throughout the course, and I pride myself on being able to do that. Says you respond to course messages, calls, or emails within 48 hours. I usually respond quicker than that, but I have 2 days, but I don't go that long. And then I've already done all these other things here. Now, let me talk about what is happening in this college. When you come to this college, we have identified what we call transferable skills. Transferable skills are things that are going to help you to be able to transfer out of college into your real world area that you want to work in criminal justice or whatever areas you decide to. They're called transferable, which means they move, and they're skills. These are things that employers are looking for in our students. You're going to hear it time and time and time again. We as faculty hear it during our professional development sessions, and I as a professor harp on them constantly throughout the course. And there are a couple that you'll hear me talking about almost all the time. So let me just take a few minutes to touch on each of these. Communication. It is so important that you be able to communicate with people. You have to be able to communicate well written and orally. I've taught courses the importance of how written and oral communication applies in criminal justice because you're going to be writing reports. You're going to provide things that end up being exhibits in courtrooms or in hearings. And so they must be professional. They must be grammatically correct. They must be correct on the details and the data that is entered. Because once you put the wrong information in, and it becomes almost impossible for you to come back and say, I made a mistake. That is a defense attorney, of which I was for many, many years, dream to get a person on the stand, not their witness, but the law enforcement that they're cross-examining, a specialist, clinical psychologist, probation officer, parole officer, correction officer, anybody. But communication is so important. So we teach you to recognize that your written assignments that you do in most classes, particularly when you get to your higher level classes, where you have your field projects and other courses like Introduction to Corrections, critical issues in criminal justice, where you're actually going to do reports, where you're going to do almost like what we call an externship, or where you're actually working in the field with someone as part of your grade. So communication is important. Critical thinking, this is my favorite topic because critical thinking involves analyzing the material, applying it to what material that you're given, putting your spin on it, supporting it with reliable, credible resources, not sources like Wikipedia, which you'll already learn. You'll get dinged as soon as you use that. But we have provided enough reliable resources in the Library and Learning Center to help you. But critical thinking is what we are trying to develop. I am a natural critical thinker because being a lawyer and having gone to law school, I was taught what we call the Socratic method. And in that method, I was taught to be able to analyze issues, think on my feet, be able to apply those things. And it's not about what position you take, it's how you support your position. I tell students this all the time, is that I'm not going to read your papers to shoot you out of the water because I disagree with you. I will explain why I might disagree on certain things and provide you with evidence as to why I'm doing it. So don't take anything personally. When critical thinking, it means that a person has taken the time to possibly even look at it from a different perspective, but they provide information to support their positions as well. So critical thinking is so important. Again, there is a really nice video that I told you on the course homepage that you can take a look at as well. I think there's even a course that you will be taking as you get further into this school about critical thinking. It's the way of the world. Employers are looking for it. They need critical thinkers, and good critical thinkers are the ones who excel. Digital fluency. Well, everything, textbooks, all our resources, pretty much. We're dealing with technology. When I started high school, I got one of these things right here, my little phone here. I've got my textbook in there. I've got a calendar in there. I've got my appointments. I got when my bills are being paid. I got everything in there. I got my bank account information. I got all kinds of stuff. And it's right there at my fingertips. Now, I had to transfer into that because when I started school and finished even law school, 1978, 40 years ago, there was no such thing. But now I'm very adept at using the various resources, learning how to use the different Grammarly, learn how to use um, books that are digital, learn because I had to carry physical books. And then the other thing is learning how to use Excel spreadsheets, Office, Word, Adobe, and all the others. Digital fluency. You must be fluent in using digital tools. Diversity and teamwork. We have people in this school from all walks of life who speak not necessarily even the English language as well as some of you do. However, they have come from other countries, but we are a melting pot. We are a diverse society, and that in your field that you're going to be working in CJ or any other field, but particularly in criminal justice, diversity is so important. You must learn to appreciate and respect people from various backgrounds, cultures, who have different beliefs than you, religious, different sexual preferences, all kinds of things. You might not have to agree, but you do need to respect. And then you're going to work with teams. You're going to be working with teams. How are you working with teams in this course? Well, your discussion forum is the closest thing we get to this. If we had a larger turnout in these lectures, I would do other things with teams. But unfortunately, too many students don't do that. As soon as they see an out for attending the live lecture, they don't. I can tell you this, that when I was in school, I had to attend because it was in the classroom. And there was no recordings or nothing like that. Unfortunately, sometimes students take the position, I can always listen to the recording. Well, that's an attitude that you don't want to keep. The only reason you should not be at a live lecture is because you could not be. Maybe you're still working, and maybe you're in a situation where you can't. I know students who get the live lectures in their cars because there is an app actually on my phone here that I can listen to a lecture as well as present one. So it's all kinds of things. So teamwork is so important. Back again to diversity, we are in a changing society, in a changing world. Unfortunately, there are some very serious, catastrophic things happening regarding diversity. There is things that people need to do and turn to, which kind of leads into the next section, ethics and professional responsibility. Ethics are so important. We stress that ethics should be the beginning, the middle, and the end of everything that you do. And in this college, we have an academic integrity policy that we ask you to abide by. I can't tell you what's happening. Like those of you who are in the lecture today, I can't even tell what you're doing. But I will say this to you, it would behoove you to be focused as much as possible on what's taking place in the lecture. When you take the test or the quiz, you're not going to be able to have your book open because it's timed, and you're not going to do as well. You don't want to have papers stuck all over the wall and stuff like that. You don't want to do that. You want to have it in here, or either as I put it, in my heart. Well, the point of the matter is this ethics is so important. I submit this to you, and I say it all the time. If you're an unethical student, you will be an unethical professional. And unethical professionals end up unemployed or behind bars or in a situation where they can't make a living. So ethics is so important. And going along with that, we deal with this whole issue. You know, you got the Me Too movement taking place across the country. You got things that are taking place where we got people who are operating in professions, and your ethics that happened to you when you're younger will come back and haunt you. You know what I'm talking about. It's on the news right now. And so it is so important for you to develop a lifestyle of operating on ethical principles. Truth is not something that has an S. Truth has no S. You can't even say truths because it doesn't sound good. Your mouth can't even formulate it. But I tell people lies just rolls off. The point of the matter is this: develop the ability and the desire to be truthful, and you make it a way of life, just like breathing. It's how you operate. You'll find yourself sometimes in trouble for telling the truth, but guess what? The trouble that you get in for telling the truth oftentimes lasts less time than lying does. And again, it'll nail you down. Professional responsibility, every area: lawyers, law enforcement, medical people, probation, parole, human services, whatever it is that you're doing, there's some professional responsibility. We as professors, we have a professional responsibility that we abide by in terms of operating in integrity and putting our best forward for the benefit of the school, but most of all for you guys as students. We set an example, and we do our best to abide by the professional responsibility. We have courses, and we take what we call continuing education courses, so that we can not just study the material on criminal justice, but we also study processes and procedures as to how we can keep the level of this institution at a high level. And that deals with our professional responsibility. And then finally, information literacy. I've talked about that a few minutes ago, being able to research. So throughout every course, you should begin to recognize communication, critical thinking, digital fluency, diversity and teamwork, ethics and professional responsibility, and information literacy are found in your written assignments. Why you do those things? Because you are one day going to be operating as a professional. The attendance policy, you know that. I'm not going to spend time, but I am going to spend time talking about this next section, the late assignment policy. Now, the late assignment policy is right here. You lose 10% for each day that your assignments are late. Okay? 10% for work up to 24 hours late. An additional 10% is assessed for each additional day. So let's say that your assignment is due on Sunday and you turn it in Wednesday. Theoretically, you could have lost 30 points or 30% of your grade and ended up with 70%, which is maybe a C or a D. The key is getting things done on time. Very, very, very important. We developed that habit because that's what you're going to be required to do as a professional. In some cases, students may be asked to complete an alternate assignment. I don't do that. I don't do that with my students because I have too many students to do that with. Online discussions must be submitted in the week that the discussion forum takes place. Discussion posts made after the due date will not receive points or grades. However, be aware of my policy. Initial posts are due as according to the school rules, according to the way your module is set up, on Tuesdays. Your reply posts are due on Saturday. I do encourage students to reply to more than one post. You don't get any additional points, but it makes the discussion forum better and more interesting. But what I want to say is this. Let's say, for example, if you submit a discussion reply post that has been submitted on Sunday, I've had the policy and still continue with it to allow you to lose a point. And if that point is taken away, then I will still give you a grade for that post. However, if you submit initial post and reply post on that Sunday, you'll get 0 because your initial post was not submitted early enough for anybody to reply to or respond to. That's the whole point in a nutshell. So don't ask me if you want to make up late assignments. Can I submit late discussion posts? I've already given you the discussion policy. And now, the next line says instructors may waive the late penalty or time frame in the case of extenuating circumstances. That does not apply to initial posts and discussion posts, but it applies to written assignments. Now, what is extenuating circumstances? I take it on a case-by-case basis. I've had some pretty serious ones. I've had some situations that were out of the control of the individuals. We've had some weather-related issues. We've had some computer-related issues. There's been all kinds of things. But the most serious ones involve serious illness, death, or something along those lines. Let me know. I need to know. I have had students who will come to me in the last week of the course and explain that they were operating under adverse circumstances. And I says, I'm sorry. I says, I didn't know that. You should let me know. I gave an open parameter as to how you communicate with me at the very beginning of this session. And again, you can listen to that and you will see. I am very flexible, very empathetic when it comes to helping students. Okay? And that's all I want to say about that. So now the last part at the bottom deals with the academic integrity policy. I'll let you read that and we'll go from there. So now I've given you that. So now I want to give you the course calendar real quick so you can see what I was talking about earlier. Here we go. Should populate. There it is. And it tells you, if you click on it, open it up, it tells you more details. Okay? So it's not just that information there. Your initial post, it tells you. That just opened up the second week. But this is where we are this week. Your initial post, your live lecture, your reply post. Again, it tells you the topic, tells you when it's due, and then your first written assignment, which is the quiz, and it is timed, and it tells you, okay? And then you'll see it all the way down. You'll see the whole calendar all the way down till we get to November. That's why I said the last lecture is going to be the second. It's not going to be 7. It'll be at 7:30. So you'll have 2 lectures week 5. You'll have one on the 30th and one on the 2nd. And then it tells when your assignments are due. And the last day of the course is Tuesday the 6th. And trust me, that's going to go very, very fast. Because here we are here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6. And that's it. That's it for the course. Okay? So now let me close that panel down. And let's get to just taking a quick look at the module. Again, your assignments, your discussion posts, and it explains parameters of that. I'm not going to go over that. And then your quiz. Okay, 20 questions. 20 questions, 40 minutes. So you'll have 2 minutes per question. And then once it starts, you can't stop it. And then you also, by starting it, you agree to abide by academic misconduct policy as set forth in the syllabus that I just shared with you a few minutes ago. And then your live lecture. Okay, each week you will have, we'll go over this. So you see there's no written assignment other than the quiz and a discussion post. Now, let's look at some materials that are very important to you. Go under the lesson content. And the lesson content starts out by giving you the objectives to talk about things like this week, the Bill of Rights. And I'm not going to go over all the details because I'm going to be wrapping up in a few minutes, about a half an hour or so. Again, normally we'll be done at 8 o'clock. And so look at the objectives. Keep in mind those as you go through. Now, again, it lays out your assignments, and then your lecture notes, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, and then your practice activity, which you're going to do yourself. All right? So now, in the criminal justice system, the criminal justice system is a system that we operate on the federal level and the state level. So each state has their own legislative branch, executive branch, judicial branch. The legislative branch consists of Congress in the United States, which is the House, which consists of 435 Congress people, and the Senate, 100, 2 from each state. And then you have the executive branch, which and then in the states, you have the same kind of thing. They don't have 450, but each state has their own. The executive branch is the governor in the state and the president in the United States, okay? And so law enforcement operates under the executive branch. As judicial branch, the judges and the court system. United States Supreme Court, highest court in the land, and then we have state courts all the way up. We have Supreme Courts in each state as well. The organization of our government, again, it talks about the same thing. It talks about when you're dealing with the United States Constitution, Article 1, 2, and 3 sets out the positions. The first one is the legislative, Article 2 is executive, and Article 3, the judges. The Bill of Rights, which I've already provided you some information. This information here I replicated for your course homepage. And then I also gave you the actual Bill of Rights that I've emailed to you, as well as it's on your course homepage as well. So we're not going to spend a lot of time going over them today. If you have any questions, reach out to me. 3 pillars of criminal justice are police, law enforcement, operated at the state, local, and federal level. That was basically with the executive. The courts and then you have the judges, the lawyers, and so forth. Corrections is issue related to punishment or sanctions. The way I explain to students is this: if you are not found guilty or don't plead guilty, you never reach the third level. These are people who have pled guilty or been found guilty. So, and then they either go to jail or prison. We're going to talk about the difference and what those are at a particular time that we go through all of that. So we're not going to do that today. So now we did talk about this issue, balancing individual rights and public order, safety. This is where you can take time to read this section and deal with the issues that you are writing about in your discussion post. It gives you some ideas from court cases that involve search and seizure. So I am going to just let you know that it is important that you read this section as well as the materials to help you deal with your discussion post. Now, again, I'm not going to go over all the details today, but in future lectures, I will be discussing more in detail. But take time to read these. These are very basic, foundational things that will help you deal with issues like due process of law, such as dealing with the issue of the right to a fair trial and all of those different things. So, and so the key thing is, as I said already in the discussion post, in my responses to a few of you, that we have to balance individual rights and public safety, that we want to protect the rights of individuals or suspects during a criminal prosecution. I can talk about the famous Miranda case in more detail. I won't today, but I have some inside information because my law professor that I had was the person whose techniques that were attacked by the U.S. Supreme Court to establish Miranda, and we'll talk about that a little later in the quarter. So, as a whole, reading this at the bottom, the criminal justice system examines the power and authority of law enforcement, courts, and corrections at all three levels, at all levels, local, state, and federal, to deal with. Okay, and then your basic criminal amendments, criminal law, and the Bill of Rights are the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 8th, and I've already provided you information about that. Okay. So now we have this practice activity. I encourage you to take the time to do these. For example, after you've read it, it says the personal freedom from government actions, and you type in your answer. And then when you click next, it will tell you what the correct answer is, and you'll type yours in as well. I'm not going to take time to do that today or most weeks, but it'll help you review the material from your reading and from the lecture and from the materials that I just went over with you a few minutes ago. Okay? And that's your expectations for this course. Again, I want to make sure that you get what you need. I want to make sure that I provide you with the details for everything that you need to help make you successful. So now I'm going to ask if you have any questions. You can type them in the chat box so that everyone can read them. But if there are no questions, and you don't type anything, I'll presume that you don't have any questions at this time. That doesn't mean you can't come back later. Any questions at this time? You can type yes or no. Okay. No, we're going to do that. We're going to do that. But always, both of you typed in privately. Make sure you type in so everyone can see it. Um, but I'm going to give the keyword. Don't worry, I'm going to give it to you in a little bit. Okay? And usually I'll summarize it at the end, but I have mentioned it a few times already. So, and where do you submit the keyword? In your drop-down box, the way you do your assignment. That's where you submit the keyword. Oh, okay, that was the question. You put it in your drop-down box. You'll see it when you go to assignments. If you go under, it'll tell you where to submit it, and then I'll see it, because then I'll be able to grade it that way. Okay? So it'll be in the drop-down box just like your other written assignments. So now let me explain something to you about the importance of criminal justice from my perspective. I am a person who's been through a lot of adversity in life before I got to where I'm today. I started with the story of explaining to you when I was 7 years old. I lived in what's called the west side of Chicago, in an area called Lawndale. It was once a very nice area, and then in the 60s, before many of you came around or were born, it turned to a pretty rough area. Gangs. Drugs weren't so big then. Even guns weren't so big, but there were guns, but not like it is today. And so Memorial Day of 1957, my dad took me to a baseball game. He loved the White Sox, so today I am a Sox fan because of that, and you'll learn why in a few minutes. And my dad and I went to the game, and we came home that Memorial Day. They had been drinking at the house and partying and barbecuing and everything. So it came time for a 7-year-old boy, who was me, and 5 younger sisters to go to bed. And we went to bed. And that evening, a fight broke out in the house where a man who had been renting a room in the house and my father engaged in a fight. And the fight ended up starting outside our bedroom, but ended up in the bedroom. And someone flicked on the lights in the bedroom, and I was laying where I could see the corner where the man had pinned my father down into the corner of the bedroom, and he took out a knife. And he took the knife and he stabbed my dad in the forehead. That was the first time I ever in my life saw that much blood coming out of a person. My father was pretty fair-skinned, and so the guy took the knife, and then he tried to pull it out, but it had gone through his skull. So the guy was pretty strong. So he ran out of the house. The next thing, the police came, took my dad out on the stretcher, and I remember my dad's eyes were open, but he didn't look like he was alive, but he was taken out. Now, I'll never forget that day or anything else pretty much, because I have something called a photographic memory, which that was 61 years ago that happened to me. But I am 68 years old, and I still remember it as vividly as it happened. So it gets worse. Yeah, what do you mean it gets worse? Here's how it got worse. The man who did that, I would find out years later, and my mom were having an affair, and my dad confronted him about the affair, and that's what the fight was all about. So the guy didn't go to jail. On a legal technicality, they did what we call nolli prosta case, which means that there was no prosecution of the case. They said they didn't have sufficient evidence. In fact, I discovered years later that my mom actually was the one who said that my dad was the aggressor, which wasn't true. and because she was in love with this guy. Well, he ended up staying with us, continuing to live with us. Now, instead of him sleeping in his bedroom that he was now sleeping with my mother openly. And during the next 5 years, from 57 to 62, my mother, at his hands, suffered violent beatings, so much that her face was disfigured. And she was hit with bats. She was stabbed a couple of times. And this guy would go to jail, and he would end up out of jail, and guess who would be there to pick him up was my mother. The police were at our house all the time. By this time, my mother had one more child, and she was pregnant with another. This was in 64. No, I'm sorry, 62. 62. So she ended up, we ended up moving from the area, and the guy moved with us. And we moved into an area in Indiana, Gary, in a nice area. In fact, we were actually living a few blocks away from these kids who were, at that time, they were little entertainers. They came to be known as the Jacksons. So it was a nice little area we were living in. So anyway, we moved there in 62. And so my mother had her seventh daughter. So I had 7 younger sisters and me. By this time, I was 13 years old. So my mother had a restaurant in downtown Gary, and Memorial Day of 63, she left to go to her restaurant and told me I was in charge of the house, as oftentimes I was, because I was the oldest one in the house and the only boy. And this guy left too with her. And so early the next morning, I woke up and there was smoke all in the house. I opened up the windows. There was barbecue that had been left in the oven, and somehow or another, someone had turned it on. Well, I looked outside, and I saw the car pull off that my mother and he shared. I looked into my mother's bedroom, and she hadn't slept in her bed, but that wasn't unusual. So I went on about my day, getting the house, with the smoke out, and then everybody woke up in the house, and I was taking care of my baby sister. I'll never forget that. And these 2 gentlemen came to the door, and they identified themselves as police detectives. And I told them they couldn't come in at first, but then I realized, I said, okay, you're the police, you can come in. Well, they made an announcement that changed my life. They said, your mother, her name was Sarah, is dead. We found her dead in Chicago. I started yelling out this guy's name from the top of my lungs. And then I looked around and I saw my sisters. They were all like crying. And then the baby, she was crying because there was a lot of noise. And so I picked her up. And so we were taken from, all 8 of us were taken from there back to Illinois to move into an area called Chatham in Southside Chicago, live with an aunt, my mother's sister, one of them. And she didn't want us there, but they were trying to decide they were going to split us up, send us to different places. Some of us were going to be placed in DCFS and other family members. We were going to be split up. But then we stayed there for about a year, went to school from 63 to 64, and then an aunt came. This aunt came, and she stayed in the house with us over at my other aunt's house. She came from Michigan, and she made the statement that we were not going to be split. She was going to make arrangements and have a house built in the south side of Chicago in the Morgan Park area, an area called Maple Park, where we could live. And so we moved out of that house and moved into that area in the Morgan Park area, all 8 of us kids. By this time, I was 14 years old. By the way, my mother, her wake, I went to her wake in 63, in May of 63 or June of 63. It was early, because by the way, he killed her Memorial Day the same way as he killed my dad. And so anyway, I couldn't go to the funeral. I was too sick, so someone had to stay with me. So anyway, we moved out of there and moved into a home, a single-family home, and my aunt and then her husband. Well, I instantly had some problems there because her husband and I didn't get along because he wanted me to take his name, and I did not want to take his name because I wanted to carry my dad's name on, and I was the only one who could carry it on. Well, as it turned out, he ended up having all kind of problems with me, and we didn't get along at all. And you know, my sisters, they all ended up becoming adopted by him and her. I would find out years and years and years and years later that I was illegally adopted the first time by them, but we fixed that legally years later. And that's a whole nother discussion. But you can imagine, I did find out also years later that one of the reasons why I didn't get along with this man is because he was sexually abusing my sisters. So it was a pretty bad situation. I went from domestic violence to abuse. And I was one who, you know, I stayed away from home as much as possible. I had a paper route, and then I got a job at McDonald's. So I was gone, and then I would go to school, and then I'd go hang out in the neighborhood, at the church in the neighborhood, and just my friends at their houses. So I came home late, and I would then go to bed and get up early and go. Well, I would find out in 64 that the man who killed my father and mother pled guilty to killing my mother, and under the law at that time, they sentenced him to 10 years. 10 years. Now, that's not a lot of years, but it gets worse. At that time, the law was 10 meant 5, and because you had day for a day. And then I was further told that for good behavior, he would serve only 3.5 years. I was so troubled. I would ask everybody questions. And finally, someone said these words to me. They said, "Richard, I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is. That's the way the law operates." I said, "The law? Talk to me about that. What is that? What is all that about?" And they started explaining to me these people called lawyers take care of those issues. I went to the law. I went to not the law library. I went to the library at my school. I was in the 8th grade. I asked the librarian for a book on lawyers. She said, "We have one book." And I said, "Can I check it out?" And I did. I took that book home and read it cover to cover. And the next day, anybody I met, I said, "My name is Richard Wright, and I'm going to be a lawyer." Well, as it turned out, I went through a lot of changes at that time. I did meet a lady that I heard on the radio. She was a perfect stranger, but I liked her voice, and I went and found her and asked her to be my mother. Now, remember this, I was 14. Now, back in those days, 14-year-olds were little kids. Now 14-year-olds are 6 feet. But the woman laughed. She said she'll be my friend, and she stayed my friend from that point on. Well, I ended up going through high school, graduated from high school. Some friends of mine, I told my aunt that I was going to not live in the house with them anymore after I graduated from high school. I graduated, I was 19 because my birthday was in May. I graduated in June of '69, so I just turned 19. So I ended up um, getting with my friends, and my friends, they asked their mother if I could come and stay at their house for a while. My aunt and my uncle, by the way, I had a chance for a 4-year scholarship, but all they had to do was sign as guardians. But he said, no, I'm not having him sign because he won't take my name. And so I said, I'm not doing it, and I didn't. So what I ended up doing was registering for junior college at a city college in Chicago called Loop College, which is called Harold Washington. My friends, they told their mother knew a lady downtown Chicago who worked in a big Jewish law firm, and see if they could get me a job. I took a job in the big law firm. Went to school at night. I didn't have a car. I had books at that time. I'd go to school, have to be at work at 8:30 in the morning, and get off at 4:30. At 4, and then have to be in class at 4:30. And I did that Monday through Thursday, and then on Saturdays I went to class, and I rode 2 buses and a train, L train, to get there. And I'd study on the train often. Well, in the law firm, I got a job in the mail room, and I would go to work dressed with a shirt and tie. The guys used to tease me because they wore polo shirts, but I was dressed up. I didn't wear a suit jacket, but I'd go dressed. And people began to take note of me because when I got to the law firm, I introduced myself as Richard Wright, and I would tell them the same thing I told anybody I met, that I'm going to be a lawyer. And they began to look at me and see me as this kid that meant what he said. I got married right away, which was not a good move, but I did it. And my first wife and I, shortly after that, here comes one kid in '71. Here comes another kid in '72. And we got married in 1970. And I had this little job at the law firm. I'm not making a lot of money, and going to school at night in that scenario. I would oftentimes get home late at night, grab a little bite to eat, study, tuck my kids. They were in bed already, but just kiss them and say good night to them, and then get up the next morning. I'd be gone again early the next morning because I had to be at work at 8:30, so I'd have to leave about 6:30, 2 hours before that with the transportation. Anyway, I did that. I stayed on the honor roll and the dean's list at the junior college. In the meantime, the law firm, they saw that I meant what I said, so they promoted me from a messenger to a file clerk in the law firm. And then something happened with the law librarian, where the law librarian passed away suddenly, and guess who they approached? You got it. It was me. They said, we've been watching you. We think you can probably do this job. And I did. I became the law librarian. In the meantime, I was matriculating up the ladder in junior college, and I ended up going to a 4-year institution called Roosevelt University, studying political science. Same thing at night and Saturdays. So I continued working in the law firm as a law librarian. But what I would do in the law library, guys, is I would sit there and I would listen to the lawyers as I was being the custodian of the books, and I would hear them talk about the cases. They were civil attorneys. Sometimes they did some criminal stuff, but I would just listen to them. And my heart was in criminal law because of what happened. So anyway, I ended up teaching myself how to do legal research. Now, we didn't have the technology to do legal research. It was done manually. So I did that research. I studied going to school. I dealt with my family and the 2 girls. And I ended up dealing with some real adversity. Financially, we didn't have the best of stuff, but I had a time when I finally was given a car. It was a beat up car, but I actually got the car from my friend's parents, who I stayed with a short period of time before I got married. And the lady who was I'd asked to be my mother, she was still my friend and was at my graduation when I graduated from high school. And so anyway, I ended up coming to the point where it was uh, at the job, the lawyers were talking about a case or some legal issues, and I listened to them intensely, and I knew what they were talking about. I didn't say anything; I just listened. And so I found myself after they left, deciding to take my lunch. I went to the bookshelf and I noticed the cases that they were talking about, the points of law that they were discussing. And I pulled those cases, about 10 books, stacked them up with a legal pad on it. So the lawyers came back from lunch, and when they came back from lunch, they asked me a question. They said, where are the books? We can't find any cases on point. All the books are missing, every single one of them. There's about 10 of them. So I said, come over with me, and I took them over to the table. And I said, those are the books right there. They said, who did that? I said, I did that. They said, you know how to do that? I said, yeah, plus I know how to do some writing as well, memos, briefs. I know how to do some research. They said, that you can. So they said, come with me. Took me to the big boss, and one of the lawyers, a guy named Harold Shapiro, told him, says, we're wasting our money on this kid. He's got skills that we never heard of before. We never seen this. And he told him what I did. And so he said, well, what do you propose we do then? He said, let's help him. Let's let him be a clerk. Now, at this time now, they call that a paralegal. And so what they did was they hired someone to be my assistant to take care of the books and freed me up to do research, writing memos. They would take me to court. They would take me to real estate closings. They would sometimes take me to criminal court when they were doing criminal cases, civil cases. The bottom line is that I was meeting people, their clients, and I would just sit there and listen, and I was learning, guys. In the meantime, I was matriculating up the ladder at the college, Roosevelt University, in my degree in political science. It came time for me to take the LSAT and to go to law school. At that time, the rule was you should apply to 3 law schools. I said, I'm applying to 1 law school and 1 only because that's where I'm going to go. Now, I wasn't cocky or arrogant, but I was secure in who I was. I said, I want to go to Northwest University School of Law. And people said, you're aiming high. That's a tough school to get into. I said, yeah. I would find out later that for every seat, there was at least 5, maybe, I don't know, it was in the thousands of people applying for 250 seats. But I was bold enough to believe I could get it. So I put together my application for admission to the law school, submitted my LSAT score, which was not tremendous, but I still felt that despite that, I could still do this because I believed in myself. I knew I was doing well in school. I was constantly on the dean's list and honor roll. Now, it came to the point where I sent the package over to the law school. The law school application was about 8 pages long, but I submitted it in a big box. It was a big box because I submitted writing samples. I submitted some written information concerning what happened to me coming up as a child, and I sent that to the law school. The law school did something that they now do. They now have interviews where students come. At that time, they did not. But they called me and invited me to come to campus because they wanted to see who was behind this package. So I went to the law school. This was in 1975. And I went there and I sat in a room, and there were 3 or 4 individuals sitting across the table asking me questions, and I was answering their questions. And so then they said, "Wow, you're an amazing young man." They said, "Let us deliberate a few minutes." And they left me sitting, and they came back about, it seemed like forever, but it was probably about maybe 15, 20 minutes or half an hour. Anyway, they came back, and one of the men said to me, "We don't give offers across the table like this. We deliberate together as a committee. We decide when we have a candidate based on information. We cannot say that you will be accepted in the law school, but we will say that we will be sending you some correspondence in the next month that I think you'll be happy to get." And that was their informal way of saying, "Welcome to Northwestern University School of Law." And so I got accepted, guys. I got into that law school. I got in there, guys. Despite all the challenges, it was tough. Financially, we ran out of money almost the first year of law school because the person I was married to at that time, she graduated the same year I did from undergrad as a teacher. And I couldn't work the first year of law school at Northwestern. It wasn't one of those deals I had to leave my job, so her income was the sole support. But this was the first time in history that Chicago public school teachers went on strike, and we lost income. Now, here I was engaged in my first year of law school. Law school was like, the first year is like 2 years of college in 1 year. It was that intense. We had these big books. Criminal law book. My criminal law book looked like something out of a big encyclopedia, a big one, or a huge Bible. But all of my classes had those. But I still continued. But I was just getting discouraged. And so our lights went out. We didn't have the money to pay for electricity, so I'd study by candlelight. My kids would sit, and then we finally sent them to their grandmother. And then my first wife at that time and I would sit at the table, and I would study by candlelight. I said, if Abraham Lincoln can do it, so can I. And I continued. But it got tougher and tougher and tougher. So finally I went to talk to a professor at the college. Dr. Joyce Hughes is her name. She is there right now, even to this day. And she was my, I forget which class I had with her, but anyway, I told her that I was going to possibly take a leave or leave the school. She said, before you do that, come see me. And she took me, and I went to see her in her office. Well, she didn't take me. I took myself there, and she took me in there, though, and sat me down and stood behind the door and said, I understand you have obstacles and problems, but everybody does. She says, I'm not moving from this door until you tell me that you're going to stick it out. I will be here to help you in any shape, form, or fashion, any way I can. And so I agreed to get out of that room, but I also am a man that when I take on a challenge, I says, I'm going to do this. So I stayed there. While I was going to law school there, one of my classmates, his dad was a distinguished criminal defense lawyer, a guy by the name of R. Eugene Pencham. He would become a judge later, but Mr. Pencham taught me some trial advocacy classes and told me I had some skills and abilities. And then his son took myself and about 3 or 4 other young students, first-year students, to his house on the south side of Chicago, and we sat and we talked, and the dad started firing questions at us and talking to us about how to be good lawyers. And then after everybody left, I told him my story, and he says, wow. He said, let me give you a little good advice. He said, if you want to really learn about the criminal justice system and how it works, don't be a prosecutor because that's what you tend to possibly be. I said, well, I'm not sure about that either. But what I did tell him was I would listen to what he said, and he made a recommendation to me. And he said to me, he says, I recommend that you become a criminal defense lawyer. Now, that's a hard thing, guys, where I would be defending individuals who are charged with serious crimes. So I took him up on it, and I did. And ended up graduating from the law school. By the way, he was our commencement speaker at the law school that year, 1978, June 17th, when I graduated from that great institution, Northwest University School of Law. And I went back to the law firm, and I ended up deciding to leave there after 2 years, 1980, to work with some other lawyers. I didn't like their ethics, so I started my own practice doing all kinds of law. I did entertainment, sports, radio, TV. And by the way, the lady that I asked to be my mother, she would always keep up with me. And so here I was practicing law, and we get to the point where I'm representing criminals. I started doing radio. And that's, I guess it came from me being around her. And I came up with this program called Know Your Rights, which was spelled WRIGHTS. And my phone number was 974-4487, which if you spell it on the phone, it spells WRIGHTS. So I became a lawyer. I became one that people really respected because I worked hard, especially in the criminal law field. I love juries because I could connect with people pretty quickly. So anyway, Judge Pincham suggested that I go to, he became a judge, suggested that I go to California to take a course in trial advocacy with the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, which I did. And I ended up going to work there. Doing there for the summer of '84. I ended up meeting this gentleman who was over my section, and at that time he called himself John Cochran. 10 years later, I would meet him again, and yes, it's Johnny Cochran, and I learned some techniques under him. So anyway, in October of '84, I would find out for the first time that I never really knew that I had been illegally adopted. I had never used the name of my uncle and aunt, but I ended up finding they could not find a birth certificate with my name on it, and then I ended up getting the birth certificate that had my name changed. My father's name was gone, and the aunt was my mother. I was just distressed. She had passed away at that time, and her husband, I called him and asked him, what was this about? And he said a few choice cuss words and hung up on me. So I cried, and I told the lady that was very close to me, and she actually called me her son during that period, what happened. And she said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I don't know. I can do a number of things. I could go change my name legally and get my dad's name back, but the birth certificate will have this man as my father. I said, he's as bad as the guy that killed my mother and father. She said, well, so what else could you do? I said, well, there was one other thing I could do, and I'd live with you off and on periodically. I could be adopted. I was 34 years old. And we ended up, with the help of her attorney, because I had made her go get legal advice, she ended up deciding to go through and help me. And she legally adopted me, and legally my name became my dad's name, Richard Howard, which is my natural mother's maiden name, Wright, went from Richard Collins, which was the name of my aunt and uncle, to Richard Howard Wright that I was born with. But then I added her name, Mary D, D-E-E, to my name. So my name to this day is Richard Howard D. Wright. That's my legal name. So legally, she's my mother. But in the meantime, I continued to move forward. My first wife and I, we went in different directions. There were different beliefs we had. So we parted company. By the time I graduated, I had a third daughter. My third daughter is 40 years old. She's scheduled to graduate from Rasmussen College in medical billing and coding in December. And my other two daughters, one became a psychologist, clinical psychologist, and the other a school teacher like her mother. So I went through all of that. In the meantime, I got married to a second person. It was disastrous. I got into church. I went to seminary, 91 to 93, for a Master of Arts in Religion. And we ended up having problems. So what happened is that I ended up reaching the stage where her mother became village president or mayor in a tough town in the south suburbs of Chicago called Ford Heights. I became a village attorney, but I wasn't going to take the job unless I could carry a gun. They said you can't carry a gun unless you are law enforcement or police officer. So I went to the police academy and became a part-time police officer. So here I am, 89 to 93, serving as a police officer, village attorney, village prosecutor, and then I became an internal affairs investigator because they were crooked cops dealing with their ethical issues. And I worked with the feds and all of that, and then we found out all the different things that happened. In the meantime, I ended up not with that wife because she took off with the pastor of the church. I mean, that was some bad stuff, guys. Anyway, in the meantime, I kept moving on. So I met the young lady that I became friends with, and now I've been married 24 years to her. Well, what I'm saying to you guys is this. I did a number of jobs, kept my law firm. I decided to retire in 2000 at 50 years old. I decided to run some businesses, taught special education and behavioral disorder kids, and ran some businesses in real estate and so forth that did me okay. Then in October 2011, someone told me about this school, Rasmussen College, and I did some research. I had never heard of this school, and they told me about it, and I did my research and due diligence, and I found out that the chairman of the board was a former president of Northwestern University. And that gave this school credibility in my eyes. And I ended up taking a job October 1st, 2011 as an adjunct professor at the college residentially at that time, teaching business law. And then quickly I let them know that I was a criminal justice guy, and they ended up putting me in the criminal justice program, where in 2014 I became what they call the state program coordinator of the School of Justice Studies, where I was responsible for the whole program in the state of Illinois, handling 4 campuses, the Romeoville, the Aurora campus, the Mokina Tinley Park campus, and the Rockford campus. And so I did that, and then finally they changed that, and then I became an instructor, moving up the ladder from assistant associate to assistant professor, and now full professor, teaching criminal justice. And so I come to the point now where I've had a number of students. I've had students who I'm taking teaching now that I've had for the last 3 or 4 years in various classes: criminal law, introduction to corrections, evidence, constitutional law, critical issues in criminal justice, ethics in criminal justice, all the way up to drugs and crime that I teach now as well. And now I'm here with introduction to criminal justice with new students. And so here I am saying to you guys the same thing I say to every one of my classes. I expect you to be professional, ethical, educated professionals when you leave this school, especially if you're in my class. And I set the pace because I don't want anybody to go through criminal justice. The criminal justice system let me down. But I now, with all the expertise I have in those various areas and law enforcement, I didn't become a judge. I turned down that position. Had an opportunity for that. But I did all the stuff that I need to. I've dealt with enough judges. The point of the matter is this. You guys have me as an instructor. I've been through some stuff, but I persevered through. That's why my motto is adversity is the springboard to success. So I want to let you know that for the next 5.5, 6 weeks, I will be the coach and you will be the players. Or I could be the quarterback and you guys can be whatever else. The bottom line is that we are a team working together, and my goal is to help you guys succeed. And so it's a little longer today because I wanted to take time to let you understand why you see adversity as the springboard to success. I'm sure that there are many of you, and I've run across students all the time who say, wow, that's a compelling story. I say, that's me. That's my life. And I'm open book to my students, and I'm here to be a support to you. And so I'm going to say good night to you, and I'm going to give you the key word, adversity. That's it. Give me that word, adversity. So with that, I'm going to say good night to you guys. Hope to see you next Tuesday when we will be an hour, sometime maybe an hour, 5 minutes, but probably not even that long because of the way that the material that I will be giving out to you. So I wish you a good week, and if you have any questions, I've already laid out how to reach out to me. So I'm going to say good night, and make sure you get those assignments in. Start off right, start off doing well, so that week 6, then you'll be able to. So, you're welcome. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the story. Tell somebody. You got a professor who understands. They call me Mr. Empathetic. Not sympathetic, but empathetic. I'm here to help you. Good night.